Welcome to the first episode of DMV Artists, where we sit down and meet with some upcoming artists in the DMV area to see their writing process and ideas behind what they want in the future. Today I'm with Marah Burnes, who is working in the pop music scene and who has recently released an album called Dominoes. It is great to meet with you today, Marah.
Great to meet with you.
So after I listened to your album, which by the way I thought was really inspired and soothing and calming, I was wondering if you could describe to us the feelings behind your first ever album.
So Dominoes was really based on a collection of experiences starting in 2020. So 2020 was the first year I actually got to sit down and write as much as I wanted, which was amazing. And so a lot of the songs were almost like a 3-year journey of getting them fully written, recorded, and produced. So it was difficult to kind of piece together the songs that I wanted to be on the album. But every song has an element of the domino effect in real life. So the kind of events that kind of spiral on top of each other until everything comes crashing down. And it does sound kind of depressing. I'm sorry. But but I thought it was a really cool how these things happen and how, I mean, it's happened with friends, with family, with like relationships. So all of those things combined I found really interesting, and I wanted to make an album about it.
Yeah. And, you know, actually, I know we said on like your Spotify, I know you said that it was like about domino effect and how like you're affecting relationships and all that. What inspired you, though, to write throughout that whole topic of dominoes? Was it like based off of personal stories, or did like inspiration from other people kind of affect some of that too?
A little bit of both. So I would say most of the album is based on personal experiences, with the exception of My Cards Were Stacked. My Cards Were Stacked was a story that I completely made up. It was just, I found like these two characters in my head and I just created a story because I was feeling like doing that. But most of them are based on real experiences and real people. So
I remember you writing some of that back in the pandemic. I think we were like 8th, 9th grade. And I remember you did a lot of live stuff on Instagram. And I remember I like joined you a couple of times and I'm like, what is she doing? And I was so confused, but it's kind of cool because even though I don't remember entirely, maybe like one of those songs that you were writing, like on your Instagram live, I might have been there to like see it, which is cool. I do remember kind of commenting on certain things. I do remember complimenting it a lot though.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, those were the days. I bet some of those songs actually did make it onto the album because I think Nothing Lasts Forever was almost entirely written on live, for sure. And then a lot of stuff was posted to TikTok. My brother made me download TikTok in like a month before the pandemic. So that was a lot of experimenting and terrible effects.
Oh,
but
no.
it was a really fun experience.
When I listened to your album, I could definitely sense this like Taylor Swift, Olivia Rodrigo kind of feel to it. And it was more like toned down, like not in a bad way, like in a really kind of interesting way, I thought. I felt like there was like, instead of there being these big bombastic moments that you see in a lot of Taylor Swift and Olivia Rodrigo songs, there's a lot of like stripped back. It was very toned down, just his guitar and like light percussion. It added that very big soothing feel. And so and I felt that really helped with those breakups and like those hard times. It really like conveyed those like feelings really well. Because do you have any other bigger musical influences, or is it like just that?
Definitely Taylor Swift. Thank you for the compliment. She's been a very big influence for me ever since I was little, and I've just really always admired her storytelling. And that's something that I always try to emulate in songs. So I would say Taylor Swift, Kelsey Ballerini is really good. I used to listen to a lot more country when I was younger. Billy Joel is a fantastic songwriter, storyteller. So just all of those amazing artists, because I'm definitely a person that writes lyrics first and then melody later.
Yeah.
So I do have a more stripped back feel because of that, and I kind of like it that way.
I mean, and I think that kind of incorporates a lot of emotion. I think storytelling usually really helps bring out emotions, because if you kind of have those big bombastic songs that are in like concerts and all that, I feel like it gives you that big like energetic feel and just it's a party. Mm-hmm. But then like when you have like the music that you were talking about, like Taylor Swift, Billy Joel and all that, you know, they kind of make their music that like given certain aspects of it, it can really just kind of like hit you in your heart, dig into your soul kind of, which I kind of thought was like really interesting that your album kind of like tried to like convey that a bit.
Yeah, thank you. That's definitely the biggest goal, is to make sure that the purpose of the album is to make people feel understood and to kind of hit home at some stuff that I feel like is universal for everybody.
Yeah. Is there any particular song on this album that sticks out to you the most though? Like, can you talk about your experience with writing that specific song and what it was like recording and all that?
Oh, that's a good question. I know I'm not supposed to have favorites, but Dandelion is a personal favorite of mine. I remember writing that song, and I don't know how I came up with the metaphor of like the dandelion on the side of the road, and like that was like a recurring theme, but I really stuck to that, and I found I was stuck on the melody for a little bit actually. And so, pro tip, this is not copyright, but if you go on Guitar Tabs and you search up a song that has a similar sound that you're trying to emulate, and you look up those chords, and then you play around with them, mix up the chord progression, that's how I find a lot of my melodies, because sometimes I don't know which chords are going to sound great. So I try and I just look up the chords of a song that I want it to sound like similar to.
Yeah.
But that was a really great way to get out of that melody rut. And then when I was recording Dandelion, I had just seen this thing on TikTok where you take a rubber band and you put it on near the bridge of the guitar, and it makes it sound like super folky and plucky.
Oh, I know that trend. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did that before, but I think I did it with a rubber band and like a pencil or something like that. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's kind of like a makeshift capo, but it gives it that folk sound. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It is so cool. And I loved that sound because it was so because the whole thing is dandelion. It's very naturey. It's very folky. So I loved experimenting with that. And that's why it's become one of my favorite songs on the album.
So just basically out of like a lot of love and time was spent into making that song was like why it's your favorite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And so for your listeners out there, here's a sneak peek of Marah's song Dandelions.
It's fine, I'm glad to be needed, but would you show me off in the front display? It's fine till I'm the one bleeding, and you leave me on the side of the road like a dandelion.
So that was Dandelions, guys. So Marah, do you plan on keeping this folk Taylor Swift vibe, or are you planning on changing genres and maybe experimenting more with your music in the near future?
I would love to experiment. I'm working on a year-long project this year called, well, I'm calling it in my head, the Senior Singles. So I released X Across the Sky first. It's definitely a lot darker.
Yeah, I heard about that.
It kind of gives more of like a Hosier vibe, or like a, I don't know. Because I wanted to make something like stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really cool. And then I released a Christmas song, which I had never done before. And so I always think of Christmas music as like a subgenre of jazz, just because they
I could agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could agree with that. That's a good way to put it.
So I used a lot of jazz chords, and that was a really fun thing. I used a lot of brass instruments for Christmas Eve, which I never use. Valentine's Day is definitely in my comfort zone. It's like more pop, but I'd love to experiment with different genres. And I know a lot of people like Janeth, who did the bass for a few songs on Dominoes, or just Matali, who does jazz. She's like the best in the state. She's amazing. I would love to explore different genres, because I feel like A, why not? And B, I want my music to have something like a little bit of everyone, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like that can maybe get more variety into it too. That'd be like really interesting to hear. Was X Across the Skies, I know I read that, like when I like listened to it, I kind of got about it. Was that about the fires in New York City? Was that what it was about?
Yeah. So I had written down X Across the Sky, just the title, a couple years before the fires. And so it was just sitting in my notes app for years. And then, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, just the title. And then all of the fires from Canada happened, and my aunt was in New York because she lives in New Jersey, so she lives really close to New York. And she was sending me pictures, and that actually became the art for the single because she was just sending me these super orange and fogged up pictures of New York and New Jersey, and it was crazy. And like no one was going outside, and everyone was wearing masks again.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that too. I actually thought that was maybe like a meet that you went to or something when that photo was taken. It was like I was kind of wondering. I was like, why would she go to New York when there's fires going on up there?
Yeah, so I asked her to send that picture to me because she happened to be in New York at the wrong time. And I felt so bad because she's my great aunt, so she's older too. And I was like, you need to protect yourself. You need to be wearing a mask. This is not good.
Yeah, it was unfortunate like circumstances. It was actually like I remember down here, even though it wasn't very orange, it was very foggy, and it was probably not smart for me to go out when I did. But I get that entirely. It's like interesting. I haven't heard anybody like write about that kind of experience before.
It was kind of just like the right event at the right time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I can use this title that I've had sitting there for 3 years, and there's like a relevant event that so many people have experienced. Why not?
Was the title of it like a metaphor kind of thing? Because obviously, like with the smoke, there's not like a big X across the sky. So that's why I was wondering. I was like, is that a metaphor for something? Or is it like, what inspired you to have that specific title, that would go with it?
It actually, I would love to say it was a metaphor, and I'm super deep, but I was driving to my grandmother's house, and she lives next to like these 2 large smokestacks. And so there actually was an X on the sky.
Was there actually?
Yes. Yes. So like the clouds, the way that it looked, it was like an actual giant X.
That actually sounds really cool.
Middle of the sky. Yeah.
Where was this at?
So she lives in King George, Virginia. So it was like Southern Virginia.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. That actually sounds really cool though.
Yeah, it was.
So, wow. Sorry, that just like completely took me away though. That
Yeah.
It was kind of like that.
I'd like to say it was a metaphor and that I'm super intellectual, but no.
So, Marah Burnes is a pop artist from the DMV area. Along with her new album, Dominoes, Marah has also released 2 new singles called X Across the Sky and Christmas Eve, which I highly recommend checking out. You can find her on Spotify, Apple Music, and SoundCloud. Thanks for listening to DMV Artists with Tribune TV. We will see you next time.
Gorgeously toxic, sweet and psychotic. Love would stab me in the back. When you were drinking, you were the